iTestify is about testifying of what Jesus Christ has done and can do in each of our lives. Through testimony of people just like you, and through study of His Word, our prayer is to encourage each follower of Christ to be a light in this world. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16.
Hello and welcome to iTestify. We're very happy to have you joining us today, and we are also happy to have our good friend Greg with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, Greg is the director of Friday Night Singing Bands. And before we get into what that is, Greg, why don't you tell us about the mission behind Friday Night Singing Bands?
Of course. So how many of you know what the motto of Loma Linda University is?
To make man whole.
To make man whole, exactly. And we at Friday Night Singing Bands believe that we are a small part of this. Let me explain what I mean by that. There's more to healing than just the physical healing of our body. The healing also is in our soul. It's our emotional well-being. It's our intellectual well-being. And we believe that music is a part of doing this. And not only music, but the act of actually interaction with the patients and praying for them and encouraging them in their sickness and their path.
Is there a verse that goes along with your mission?
Absolutely, there is a verse that goes along with our mission. And that is found in Matthew chapter 25, verses 34 through 36.
I can read that.
Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me.
Amen.
So we really feel like we are, in fact, observing that commission that Jesus Christ gave us to go and to visit those who are sick, to visit those who are in the hospital, and to give them encouragement. Now, Christ, when He was here on earth...
Well, obviously, I have a question
Yes,
for you.
please.
Is this a suggestion? Because it seems like in this chapter, there's only two options.
Mm-hmm.
Either you're doing it or you're not doing it.
I think that if you're to take this text literally, it's not a suggestion,
Yeah.
if you want to ask me.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No worries at all, Reed. I think that was a good question.
Yeah.
So, when Christ was here on earth, this might come as a surprise to a lot of you, but He actually spent very little time actually preaching from the pulpit. He actually spent the majority of His time ministering to people's needs. He was healing the sick. He was raising people from the dead. We don't raise people from the dead. I wish we could, but we can minister to their needs. And by doing so, He was planting the seed. Oftentimes, the cycle of evangelism is referred to as the cycle of agriculture, where you are preparing the soil. And then after you prepare the soil, it's ready to be seeded. And we are, in effect, preparing that soil and planting the seed in their hearts. And there's no better place to do that than when the person is already suffering. You have a wide field of labor there that people are just hungering for the truth when they're in that kind of a condition. Besides, you kind of have a bit of a captive audience.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
So we gain their trust, and we have a way of reaching people who otherwise would never have stepped into the church, who would never have bothered to listen to a program, a sermon, or anything else like that. And we have actually gained an entrance into their heart.
Yeah, I like how that's actually connected to the verses that we just read in 35 and 36. It's not just, I love the list, because the list covers a multitude of situations that a person is in, the physical needs, as well as just the fact, like it says, I was a stranger. So that's not only talking about a physical need, or like a physical location or where you are, it's talking about who you are to that other person.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
And also, if you think about it, there's a due application to the text, because you can hunger, you can thirst, and you can give them literal food, literal water. But there are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, and you're the one that provides that food or nourishment. There are those who are in prison, and there's spiritual prison. When Jesus came, he preached in Luke 4 from Isaiah. He was quoting that he came to set the captives free, the captives in sin. And so you're going to visit these people in the literal sense, but you're providing a spiritual awakening as well that they may not have otherwise heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk some more now about literally what Friday Night Singing Bands does. Friday Night Singing Bands meets on Fridays.
Yes, we meet on Fridays, hence the name Friday Night Singing Bands. We meet every Friday night in the Medical Center lobby here at Loma Linda University. And we start off by actually singing to the visitors in the lobby area. And you'd be amazed at the reception. These visitors are not expecting this. And so many times these visitors are like, we're waiting for our loved one who's in surgery, and we were really down and out. And you guys came, and it just brightened us up. It was what we needed. Aww. And then after we get done singing to them, we go upstairs, and we go to the units, into the hospital rooms, and sing to the patients while they're actually in their beds. And we always sing at least one song, usually two, sometimes more. It depends upon the patient. Some patients don't want to let us leave. And after we get done singing for the patient, we always ask if the patient wants a prayer. You'd be amazed how many yeses we get. Maybe not so amazed. People who are not Christian at all will say, well, it's not going to hurt anything, so why not? People will be like, other people are just desperate for a prayer. They'll be, before we even finish singing, they're like, would you please pray for us? So we pray for them, and then we're not done yet. Oftentimes, the patients will be opening up to us. Remember, we've sowed that seed. We have gained their trust by going in and singing to them. And they'll actually start to open up to us, and that gives us the opportunity to really witness to them. We can share our own testimonies of times that we've gone through difficult times, whether that be in the hospital or whether that be with another event in our life, because sometimes these people are suffering with a whole lot more than just their health. They've got children who are going through difficult times. They might have another family member who's struggling. And so we have the opportunity to really encourage them and open up the Bible and show them encouraging Bible texts and stuff that really helps to get them through some of the situations that they are struggling with. And we minister to a lot more than just Christians. We minister to people of every religion, literally Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs. There's people from all over the world who come here to Loma Linda. We are a well-established institution. There's people who come here from Japan, from India for heart transplants. And these are people who have never heard the name of Jesus, of course. We are their very first introduction to Jesus. And we even minister to atheists, people who don't believe in God at all. We come in and we sing to them, and they're open to it. I mean, after all, they're in the hospital. They have nothing better to do but to listen to us sing to them.
Yeah, there was an experience where there was I think he was the chief surgeon, or he was the department head of something, and he was not Christian, and he ended up having a fall off his bike and having to go into the hospital. He now became a patient. And so there was people that came in and were praying. They weren't singing necessarily, but this was an introduction to Christianity that he hadn't seen it from a patient's perspective. And so you don't realize the impact you have in the situation where someone's there, they feel like they have this traumatic injury or pain or suffering, and you're there and you're just brightening their day through songs, through prayer, through actual just genuine concern for how they're doing. And it opens up a bridge or entering wedge that you can share something that's more long-lasting.
Absolutely, you can.
How long have you been doing this for?
I've been the director of this ministry now for about 4.5, close to 5 years. Wow. But the ministry, I did not have anything to do with the founding of this ministry. In fact, we really don't know exactly where it was founded or when, other than the fact that it's been going for probably close to 100 years.
What?
We have an interesting antidote. We actually sang to a patient. I was not in that group. It was another one of the groups. They sang to a patient, and afterwards he opened up to us that he actually sang to he was almost a 100-year-old gentleman, He said, yeah, I used to sing when I was in medical school here at Loma Linda with you guys 75 years ago.
Wow.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
he said, I had no idea if this group was still going. In fact, I'd kind of forgotten about it. And then you guys came in and sang to me, and it was like, I'm so thrilled to see it still going.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
we've had confirmation that this group has been going on for a minimum of 75 years.
Wow.
And probably a few years before that. We would love to know. When we get to heaven, we'll talk to whoever it was, the nurses, whoever that started this.
How many people come on a regular basis?
Typically around 20 to 30 people on a regular basis.
So like you said, you guys split up into smaller groups.
Yes, we split up into groups between 5 to 10.
You have guitarists and violinists, different
Yes, we do have
instruments.
different instruments that accompany us.
Typically not playing trumpets.
No, no trumpets. I'm a trumpet player, but I have to leave my trumpet at home.
Great.
You know, I think it's really cool that you come and play for the patients, but often, like you mentioned before, with the family who's waiting, it's not just for them. It's also for the family members. And I think that's something that gets left behind, because even though we're there to minister to the sick, sometimes you don't realize that this part of their sickness includes their family. Those are the ones who are the closest to them, or maybe they're sick too and not just quite as bad off as the ones that are there. And so it's healing for anyone who's there, even the ones who didn't want it, you know.
I love that too. I think, you know, in certain situations, say if the patient is unconscious or in a coma, it's actually more difficult for their family members to go through this situation, in a sense. Just the fact that they're conscious of it, just the fact that they have to see a loved one in that condition. So it's very important as well.
I like to use the example of an old wagon wheel, those wooden wagon wheels with the wooden spokes. If one of the spokes is broken, the entire wheel suffers. And one of the things that becomes very apparent when you're in the hospital is that the family are the ones who are crying. The patient feels like they're doing okay. And so there's a lot more to the healing than just the physical. Like I said, it's an emotional, it's a spiritual healing as well. And the patient's families really do suffer a lot. And that becomes really apparent when you go to the pediatric units and start singing to the children. And you can see some of the mothers and fathers whose faces are covered in agony as their little one is going through cancer. You know, we see everything you see with an adult, we see with the children too, even as little as infants, little babies who are going through cancer. Some of the stuff that we see is very heartbreaking, and the parents suffer more than the actual patient does.
So I would love to hear, I know that people watching would love to hear some stories about how this has impacted, but is there another Bible verse you want to use first or bring up to our attention before we...
There actually is. In fact, if we turn back to the book of Matthew, Matthew 24:14. And Christy, would you like to read that text for us?
Gladly. Matthew 24:14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come.
So this might seem a bit strange to be sharing this text, but I just want to point out that there's a lot more to preaching than just preaching from the pulpit. You know, our lifestyle is a sermon. And sometimes for some of these people, literally us coming and seeing them is the first sermon they've ever heard. And I would like to, you know, it says in there that preach the gospel to the whole world and then the end shall come. There's people right here in our own backyard who have never heard the gospel. And we feel like we are a part of bringing the gospel to these people who have never heard it. You going overseas and preaching to third world countries, to other places where the gospel is not known, that's a very good thing, and I certainly do encourage that. So I don't want anybody to say, no, I'm not trying to encourage that. But we have a need right here at home as well. It's everywhere. It's right in our own backyard. And for some people, going overseas is not practical for whatever reasons, whether that be health reasons or for financial constraints, whatever the case that might be. We have an opportunity right here as well. And it's an easy one. This just requires going and visiting the patients.
And this is open to anyone to come and join you on Friday nights?
There are only 2 prerequisites to coming and visiting us and participating in the Friday night singing bands. One is you need to have a desire to serve Jesus. If you have that desire, it'll spring forth from within you. The second one, which is an unfortunate one, but I do have to enforce it, is the hospital, and this is pretty much the case with any hospital. They do require you to be a minimum of 14 years old to be in the hospital.
I thought one of the requirements was going to be that you could sing.
Yeah, me too. I like that it's not.
Yeah.
No, in fact, you don't need to sing at all.
That's awesome.
We have people who are terrible singers. I'm not going to mention any names. All you have to do is show up.
Yeah.
These people, think about it. If you're in the hospital and you have nothing but a blank wall and hospital instruments to look at all day long, and you have the physicians and the nurses coming to care for you and all, that's pretty much your life when you're in the hospital. And when a group of people comes in to sing to you, it moves you in a way that I think those of us who have never been in a situation like that don't necessarily understand. And even if you're just there, your presence, that's all that's required. And there's more than singing. We pray for the patients as well. We give encouragement. Almost all of us have a testimony that we can share. We may not share that testimony with every patient, but over the course of a year, we come in contact with a lot of people, and our own testimony can touch people. And we can give encouragement. We can hold their hand. We can give them the encouragement that they need, and that might be you might be the person that they needed to see. So we don't require you to be a graduate of Juilliard to come and join us. And by the way, I'm not a professional musician either. It's a hobby for me too.
All volunteer.
Yeah.
It is 100% volunteer. We do not accept any cash. It just,
Although patients have tried.
patients do try. Almost every week we get at least one patient who will say, "How much do I owe you?" And we're like, "No, we are a volunteer ministry." And sometimes they'll really insist. And a disclaimer there, we do accept if they want to give us cash on the grounds that we are going to use this to purchase more literature to distribute to the patients. We do give them glow tracts and Steps to Christ books. And so we do, if somebody wants to give us money, we tell them we'll use that money to distribute more literature, and they are always happy to do that when we tell them so.
Nice.
But we do not take any commission for this.
Well, Greg, I would love to hear some stories about patients that have been impacted.
Absolutely. Oftentimes we don't get to see the long-term effects of these patients. So I'm actually going to start out from a testimony in a patient from a different hospital that a patient I know, but it was not our group that impacted her, just to let you know what kind of an impact we can have on these people. Somebody that I know, she's from Australia originally, and she was very seriously ill. It was a life-threatening illness, and she was not a Christian at the time. She was at one of our Adventist hospitals down there in Melbourne, Australia. And one day, one of the nurses, so this is a commission for you, Erin, as a nurse, came in, and all she did is just sat with her for a while and prayed with her, and then left. She never saw that nurse again. The mere act of that nurse coming in and praying for her made such an impact on her life that she decided she wanted to become an Adventist. And so just little tiny things can make a huge impact on people's lives. So I want to share some of the stories that we have that we see every week from our own Friday night singing band's experiences. Just for one thing, the music, it's very uplifting. There's a healing power just to music itself. We were this is in the pediatric unit. There was a young little girl who was not responsive. She had been unresponsive for about 6 to 7 weeks or so. And the nurse was like, she explained that the little girl was unresponsive, but she was like, go ahead and try singing to her anyway. It's not going to hurt anything. So we did. And about halfway through the first song, this little girl starts becoming responsive. She actually had some brain activity. She was hooked up to some brain monitors, and she actually had some brain activity going on. And the nurses were like, keep on singing, because they were trying to gauge responsiveness and movement in her and stuff like this. I'm not a medical professional, so I don't know what they were trying to do all. But they were like, keep on singing, because we're getting stuff out of her that we've not been getting for 6 weeks out of her. It's just the gift of music. Other times we'll go in and we'll sing to patients, and I always ask permission from the patients. I'm like, do you want us to sing for you? And I always ask every patient, no matter what they might look like. And I'm not going to stereotype here because I've gotten into trouble for this before, but I'll approach someone who looks like the last person in the world who you would think would say yes. And they say yes, and you start singing to them, and you sing the first couple words, and they start bawling up like a little schoolgirl, literally. And when we get done, they're like, sing another one, sing another one. And I'm like, I didn't think this guy was going to even appreciate us. And you get done and you're like, can I pray for you? And he's like, yes. This one gentleman, we prayed for him, and he's like, I realized that my life has been a mess. And he had been involved in gang activity. He had been in and out of prison a lot. And he realized that he needed to make a change in his life. And I went back the next week and revisited him, and he was like, I'm so glad you came back and visited me, because all too often I've seen Christians who have stabbed me in the back, and it's like, the fact that you guys came in here and volunteered your time and then came back to visit me again has meant so much to me. It proves to me that you're real. And I'm like, would you like to study the Bible? And he's like, yes, I very much would like to study the Bible. As soon as I'm out of the hospital here, I want to study the Bible. And he was starting to talk about his background and his friends. He's like, they're the type of people who are going to be pulling me away from this. They're not necessarily opposed to it, but it's not their style. He's like, as soon as I get back with them, they're going to get me back into drinking, back into prostitution, marijuana, drugs, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, that's what church is for. It gives you a community. And I said, I'd be happy to bring you to church. And he's like, oh, no, I have a car. I can come to church. I would be happy to come to church. And I think we're going to start studying the Bible together. And this is all because we went and sang to him.
Wow.
That's amazing.
And wasn't there someone, I don't want to, you use a different name if you like, but he started coming to Friday night singing bands because he heard you guys singing, and then he started coming to Advent Hope. Do you know the person I'm talking about? He rides a motorcycle?
Yes, I do know who you're talking about. That has actually happened more than once. We have had people who have showed up to Friday night singing bands, and they've ended up, the ministry itself has converted them. And there's people who have come to Friday night singing bands because they needed community service for their Bible class that they're taking. We get Loma Linda University attracts people from all around the world. Less than 50. Do you know the percentage of non-Adventists at Loma Linda University? It's relatively high.
I thought it was
70.
less than 50.
Non-Adventists?
Non-Adventists
I'd
at
say
Loma
I
Linda.
think it's 75.
Yeah, it's more than 50.
It's fairly high. This one girl, I'm not going to say what religion she was just to protect her identity, but she was not Christian and she was not from this part of the world. She came here because she needed community service hours, and I signed off her community service receipt. And after she got done, she was feeling so blessed by this that she kept on coming back, and she's graduated. She's moved off now to another place where she got a job. And we keep in contact with her through Facebook and Instagram and so forth. She's attending the Seventh-day Adventist church there. And I have no doubt in my mind that eventually she's going to get baptized, because she posts pictures from her Bible study on the weeknights and stuff. And this is all because of she needed community service hours, and her instructor told her, there's a group right here on campus you can go to, and you can get your community service hours, because she was an international student. She didn't have a car. So we're ministering to the students here on campus too, in ways that we would never have expected.
I like it, what you guys are doing as well, because your intention isn't to convert or to make sure that people know who Jesus is, in the sense of you're a sinner and you need this, But your intention is to share the wealth of blessings and knowledge that you have about Christ, and that comes out in what you're doing in a special way, that they see that you're genuine. They see that you have something that they may not. And I think that's so precious, because no one likes it when you appear to have something and you're holding it over their head, or you make them feel like they're worth less than what they are. And so I really appreciate that genuineness that you all have. And you can see it in the stories where you have people who their reaction is, I want what you have, or I'm grateful for what you've done for me because I can see God in you, whether or not they say those words. So I really like that.
That's a good point. A lot of times we do this every Friday night, and it starts to feel mechanical, I'll admit it. But to the patients, it's a brand new experience for them. And we are actually coming there, by volunteering for them, we actually show them a genuine interest in them. And they see Christ through us, even though we don't necessarily see it that way. They're actually seeing a reflection of Christ reflecting off of us. We are like a mirror for these people. And they see something that, like the gentleman I was just talking about. And he was just an example of many people who have told us that they see something different in us, and they realize that they need to make a change in their life. We've seen that over and over. And so we are now starting to keep in contact with these people. I try to go back and revisit them and actually establish a connection with them and try and bring them into the fold. So,
That's really nice.
and do you mind if I share a few more testimonies?
Oh, yeah.
This is one that Doug Plata actually shared with me, so I don't know how he knows this, but he shared it with me. One time we had run out of time because we tried to quit at 9 p.m. And so they decided to just sing songs through the, what do you call it there, where the nurses singing around the nursing station there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's the nurse station.
Yeah. And so the patients could hear us as they just made a loop around the corner there. And this one particular lady, she heard us singing outside. We didn't even go and visit her. And afterwards, I guess she relayed it to the nurse somehow, and then they relayed it back to us, I would presume. But she said that after hearing that music, she realized that she needs to turn her heart back over to God. So, there's numerous times where people have expressed the need to turn their lives around and come back to Christ. Over and over, people have been thanking us. They say, you're just exactly what we have needed. And we minister to people of various degrees of illness, people who are in there for just a common cold, people who just need to be monitored for some reason until their body stabilizes, whatever. So everything up to people who are in their last moments. We literally have sang to people who are literally moments away from dying. We actually did sing one time to the family. This was probably the hardest experience I ever had. I usually try to compose myself when I'm in the hospital. This is one of the times where I did not manage to keep myself composed. A young girl about the age of 17 had passed away. And the nurse, when we went, the charge nurse, I asked her, is it okay if we sing in this unit? She said, one of our patients just passed away, but the family, I think, could use songs. And I was like, oh my, what did I just get myself into here? And she came back out and she said, yes, the family really wants you guys to come and sing for them. The patient who had just passed away was still in the hospital bed.
Wow.
And still had the tubes hooked up to her. She was so disfigured that I couldn't even tell whether it was a boy or a girl. I mean, she was in bad shape. So, but the family was very touched by us. So some of the things we've done are difficult. I want to close with one more text in Colossians 3:16. And this says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord.
That's a great text to end on. And we appreciate so much what the Friday Night Singing Bands is doing and how they're ministering to those in the hospitals. And we look forward to seeing how lives have been changed in the resurrection. But until then, if you'd like to join Friday Night Singing Bands, you can meet in the lobby of the Loma University Medical Center at 7 p.m.
Correct.
And it's a couple hours of your time. Until then, please visit us again on iTestify on our next episode.